So yeah, I know this isn't exactly an easy topic to cover for your first long review style video, but I thought I'd cut the long-winded introduction and just sum up to get my actual arguments because oh boy, do I have things to say. Basically, this video was made by Critical Drinker, a reviewer slash rant channel that heavily focuses on critiquing modern media and its agenda. With this video in particular reviewing The Timeless Children, and if you've been anywhere in the Doctor Who fandom for the past 3 years, you know about The Timeless Children. So let's not waste any more time. Let's actually, get into this.
Let's begin this review with a little thought experiment, shall we? Close your eyes, dear viewer, and imagine a teddy bear. A delightful, fluffy little chap that you've had for as long as you can remember. When you were a little kid, you'd contentedly fall asleep holding it, and it would be the first thing you saw when you woke up each morning. It was comforting and fun, and it was always there whenever you needed it. Then, as time passed and you grew older, you began to need the bear less and less, but you could never quite bring yourself to throw it away, because every time you saw it, it brought a fond smile to your face, reminding you of the simple innocence of childhood, and you knew that one day you'll pass that bear on to your own children, so a whole new generation can make their own happy memories with it. What's a charming thought. Now imagine that some fat middle-aged dickhead comes along, spray paints political slogans all over your bear, telling you that you're a horrible person, rips the head off, and replaces it with an 18-inch black rubber dildo. And you're like, excuse me sir, this doesn't seem right. Why are you doing this to my bear? And the fat middle-aged dickhead gleefully tells you that he's actually improved your bear. In fact, it's never looked better, so stop complaining and enjoy it. Confused and upset by this, you go online to share your experience with other bear users, and suddenly you've got an avalanche of people who've never even owned a bear, screaming at you that bears have always had 18-inch dildos attached to them. So why do you have a problem with it now? This is just the way bears are now, and you need to deal with it. Are you some kind of bear bigot? Are you intimidated by strong independent bears? Then before you know it, the news media
Oh my god, just get on with it, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry if you find this funny, but this part of the video contributes nothing to the rest of the analysis. It's just a contextual metaphor wrapped up in some edgy humour, and it doesn't really work. It's far too vague and non-specific to be taken seriously as information, but also so vitriolic and political to be taken as a joke. All it really basically says is, Doctor Who was good, but woke politics made Doctor Who bad. Thanks, Chris Chibnall. That's it. I know it sounds like I'm oversimplifying it here, but that's it. That's all this intro really does. You could say it's contextual information for the episode we're about to watch, but it's so one-sided that you can't really take it as anything more than just an opinion. But it's framed like it's giving factual information about the discourse surrounding this era. Who's he talking about? What examples can he show of the supposed discourse? What specific episodes does this discourse seem to culminate around, following on to The Timeless Children? Are there any arguments he could potentially understand or sympathise with? Nope, just throw up some random images of SJWs who have absolutely nothing to do with Doctor Who, and the audience just won't question it. Also, I think this is as good a time as any to talk about YouTubers and their personas. It's weird to think that in a profession that's based on honesty and delving in to find the truth, so many reviewers have facades and personas. But there is a reason for this. It can add levity and entertainment to a video that may be too serious otherwise for the topic of discussion, can frame information in an interesting or entertaining way, or just be fun and a moment of reprise for the rest of the review. They can also bolster the pace of the review and make it feel like less time than it actually is. Some reviewers don't do this, but it's usually for satirical or self-aware effect, and it doesn't overly hinder the review in any kind of way. Critical does have a persona, the drunk persona, but lacks real self-awareness in favour of just talking about getting drunk, isn't satirical, and with all the slurred words and analogies, it slows down the review to an agonising crawl. Even when Critical's making jokes, he wants you to take the context of his discussion seriously, but there's no divide between information given and exaggerated jokes. They kind of blend into one. Yes, I understand Critical is taking the piss, but this isn't a comedy-based video. It wants to be a serious analytical review and discussion. But when comedy is used to frame a certain situation, like the intro, you're meant to take it seriously. It's exaggerated, but not in a satirical, self-aware way. It's just crude for the sake of being crude. If it was used to frame his opinion, then I would be fine with it, but he's supposedly recounting the reaction the general audience, or at least his, had to Doctor Who as if it's a universality for fans. Oh yeah, the entire intro goes on for like 3 minutes, and I can't really be bothered to show you the rest of it because it really contributes nothing else to the rest of the video, I swear. So we're just going to move on now.
Imagine the frustration and disappointment you'd feel in this situation. Well, this is pretty much how long-time fans of Doctor Who must be feeling right now, particularly after the final episode of Season 12, The Timeless Children. Quite literally, the 60 minutes of TV that finally killed 57 years of Doctor Who.
Okay, people keep saying this, that Doctor Who is dead or has been killed, but what exactly does that mean? Does it mean the franchise as it stands is now basically unrecognisable from what it was? Well, no, because Doctor Who changes all the time, regardless of quality. Does it mean when canon is entirely destroyed and everything around it is laid to waste? Well, no, because even though The Timeless Children is canon altering, it really only affects the Doctor's past and the Time Lords. The Daleks, the Cybermen, basically every other event leading up until this point, and all 15 versions of the character we know of, are still canon. They haven't been changed or removed. Yes, I know the Timeless Children makes certain things make less sense, for example, the Valeyard, but even when considering that, it doesn't fundamentally change him as a character, nor entirely remove him from canon. Is it because the quality is so bad across the franchise that it's basically unsalvageable? Well, no, because outside the show, there is quality material being produced and consumed by a large number of fans. My point is, at what point can someone decide an entire franchise is dead? How far do you separate this episode, for example, from the rest of the show? Is it because of popularity or ratings? Well, that's not exactly conclusive, as a bunch of factors can affect general ratings. It's advertising, when it's televised. The least watched episode in Series 4, for example, is Silence in the Library, and that's an amazing episode. If it's so bad for you that your trust in the program has gone and you don't want to watch it, that's completely fine. If it ruins the Doctor's character, and for you makes certain stories worse, that's also completely fine. But at what point is the show entirely dead? Because Russell T Davies is coming back next year, and the show will inevitably become more popular again thanks to his writing. So, will it be resurrected? I don't know.
Not to mention any lingering sense of respect I might have had for the show. So, for the final time, let's jump aboard the retardus and get into this shit.
What an amazing joke. Very good. Very well. Very... What the fuck was that?
So the Timeless Children kicks off straight after the events of the previous episode, where the Cybermen have been resurrected and the Master has returned. Again. Now everyone's hanging out beside a big portal.
Wait, no they're not. Only Ryan is with the Doctor at this point, along with the old man and the young man. You know, the two people who are not part of her fam and have only really appeared in the last episode. Yaz, Graham, and the rest of the human gang are stuck on the Cyberhulker in space. Huh.
Leading to the remains of the Doctor's homeworld, Gallifrey. Jesus Christ, how many times is this fucking planet gonna be blown up and resurrected, only to be blown up yet again? Remember when Gallifrey was time-locked, so the writers couldn't keep going back and fucking with it? That was a nice idea. They probably should have stuck with that.
Okay, credit where credit's due. That's a decent point. The more Gallifrey is destroyed, the less emotionally impactful it actively feels.
Anyway, so the Doctor impersonator and her fam are there, along with the Master.
Again, only Ryan is there. The rest are in space, in the episode. It's fairly obvious.
Who for some reason looks like a really shit version of Douglas from the IT crowds.
You bastard.
The Master forces the Doctor impersonator to go with him through the portal, leaving the others behind. Because, you know, why kill them or neutralise them in any way when you can just let them roam free and totally scupper your plans later? Fucking bellend.
Again, another decent point. Why does the Master need the permission of the Doctor in order to take her through the portal? Can't he just shoot the companions and grab the Doctor whilst he has a chance? What's with all this "I'll shrink them if you don't come with me" shit? She's right there.
And so the Master takes the Doctor impersonator for...
Oh yeah, expect a lot of derogative name-calling in this review. It doesn't really bolster any of his points, he's just making fun of Jodie for no reason.
a nice walk through the ruined capital, and for some reason, he now acts like a fucking hyperactive child with Tourette's that's just mainlined the triple espresso. Why is he so ridiculous now? The Master is supposed to be menacing and calculating. This guy's just a complete dick.
Okay, do you want to get into that point? Do you want to provide any examples? Show any clips? Show one example of how well the Master is written in one scene and how this Master isn't? No? Okay.
Then he traps the Doctor impersonator in a big machine called the Matrix that lets him get inside her head, and apparently the process is agonizingly painful, but fuck me, you'd never know it from her reaction. Either she has an incredibly high pain threshold, or Jodie Whittaker just doesn't give a shit in this scene. I'll let you decide.
Based on what? Your description? Because you encourage people at the end of this video to not watch this episode in the first place. So I only have your word if I'm part of your general audience.
Anyway, now that the Doctor impersonator is plugged into the Matrix, it's time for a little history lesson. Get your lube ready, because the big bad teddy bear's about to fuck you.
What does that add to literally anything?
We flash back to the early days of Gallifrey, before the Time Lords even existed, when a strong female explorer ventures out into the universe in search of a decent haircut.
Number one, that's a hat. And number two, at no point in the episode is Tecteun shown to be or described as a strong independent woman. She's an explorer who just so happens to be female. There was nothing in episode to show that she was defying Shabogan conventions of gender. The mission is just described as risky with very primitive technology.
But instead, she finds a magical gateway that's been conveniently left unguarded. What's the nature and purpose of this gateway? Who built it? How does it function? What lies beyond it? I don't fucking know, because the script doesn't give a shit.
Wait a minute.
A gateway. A boundary into another unknown dimension or universe.
What is important though is the diverse little girl who's hanging around waiting for the plot to kick in.
What does her diversity have literally anything to do with anything? She's a child, has basically no lines in this episode, and only appears for a very short amount of time.
So strong female explorer takes diverse little girl back to Gallifrey, and then she gets into a fight and falls off a cliff. But instead of dying, she regenerates into a new, equally diverse form.
Oh no, two children of diversity. How monstrous.
Wow, that's weird. Whatever does this mean? So strong female explorer studies diverse little girl by repeatedly murdering her and forcing her to regenerate. What's a lovely mother?
What? What does that have to do with anything? Yeah, Tecteun isn't exactly the mother of the year, but I don't think the whole point of that scene was to make Tecteun look good. Yeah, she's nice to the timeless child, but it's not like we had any preconceptions of her at this point, that she was a good person.
And eventually discovers the secret to regeneration, which she uses to create the first Time Lords. And that's it, that's how they came to be. But drink her, you courageous sermonizer, I hear you say. Whatever became of the little girl in this flashback? Take a wild guess.
Okay, credit where credit's due again. That was a pretty funny joke. Finally, a joke that doesn't rely on any kind of crude humour and has setup and payoff.
The child is you.
And you just ruined it.
Great, so now we know where the Doctor and the Time Lords came from, how they were created, and what their true nature is. Now this is all spiffing, but just like attaching an 18-inch rubber cock to your favourite teddy bear,
Oh my god, shut up about that stupid metaphor. It doesn't help anything. It's not funny.
it does create its share of problems. See, Doctor Who is a show that's been running for more than half a century now, and while different generations of writers may have tweaked elements of its canon over the years, there were certain foundational things that gradually solidified into the category of stuff we really shouldn't fuck with. And top of the list was the Doctor's personal history. We were never told exactly how the Doctor came into being, what his childhood was like, what he did before the show began, or even his real name. Why? Because we didn't need to know.
Okay, but in what capacity of canon are you taking that? Because not just in extended canon, but actively in the show itself, we do know not everything, but quite a lot about the Doctor's past. The Third Doctor and Joe from the Time Monster, The Hand of Omega, Susan Foreman, Lungbarrow, Looms, Irving Braxiatel, The Beginning, and the Master Audios. Listen, the Prydonian chapter, Unnatural History, Celestial Intervention, A Gallifreyan Noir, Theta Segma, Deadly Assassin, Twice Upon a Time, Their Expulsion from the Time Lord Academy, Cat's Cradle, Time's Crucible, Birth of a Renegade. And oh yeah, that story where the writer completely changed the trajectory of the Doctor's supposed origins. You may have heard of it. It's called The War Games. You can call me staunch and petty, and I do agree the less we know, the more we enjoy the mystery and the little snippets we are given of the Doctor's origins. But canon does matter in this case, and writers have experimented with it before. It's still technically part of canon and chronology, and has been actively explored and fucked with. But the statement Critical makes here is so vague that I don't know if he is or isn't including stuff from extended media or classic. If he is, he's uninformed when supposedly stating a fact about the franchise, and if he isn't, why? I thought the Fandom Menace was all about keeping the sanctity of canon, and this stuff isn't exactly hard to find. Believe me, I do not enjoy the deification of the Doctor as if they're some kind of special god that is the chosen one and can do whatever they want because they're so amazing and perfect, and they were born under the seventh moon of astronomical something or whatever. But here, it feels like Critical is just talking about New Who, even though he showed clips from Classic Who in this very segment, as if he knows it. Just to make it actively clear, I am not gatekeeping here. But surely if you want to talk about the Doctor's origins in relation to the show, maybe you should, I don't know, actively look up the Doctor's origins.
The writers were wise enough to realise that the mystery of the Doctor was way more interesting and compelling than anything they could actually come up with to explain it.
Which writers? Who are you talking about? Obviously Russell and Moffat, but what about the Classic Who writers who did add something to the Doctor's past? Or the Wilderness Years writers, or Big Finish?
All we knew for sure was that he was a Time Lord from Gallifrey who went rogue, stole a TARDIS, and went on a bunch of adventures through time and space. How and why he became the Doctor was less important than what he did afterwards.
Okay, I agree with that. I think it's much more important about the person you actively become than the person you're born as.
Likewise, the origins of Gallifrey and the Time Lords was kept deliberately vague for exactly the same reasons. The Time Lords were portrayed as epic, godlike beings of almost infinite power and wisdom. Where and how they started out was just another mystery for the audience to speculate over, something to fire the imagination and stir a sense of wonder.
Again, in what capacity of canon are you actively talking about the Time Lords? Are you just talking about them in New Who, or Classic Who, or the entire franchise as a whole? Because if you are, well, that's not true. Heck, in extended media, we probably understand the Time Lords more than the Doctor themselves, even in Classic Who. Yeah, in stories like The War Games or Terror of the Autons or Genesis of the Daleks, for example, they were portrayed as more mysterious, but these appearances were few and far between. Every other appearance we got of the Time Lords, from the Three Doctors to Deadly Assassin to the Invasion of Time to Arc of Infinity to the Five Doctors to even Trial of a Time Lord, you know, the entire season that takes place on Gallifrey and learning about its judicial system, portrayed them as bureaucratic, uptight assholes who only cared about themselves, and were far less grand, omnipotent, and official than they thought they were. As for the backstory of Gallifrey, well, there's quite a lot of it. So the Time Lords were known as the Shobogans in the beginning, before becoming known as the Space Lords, having conquered space but not time. Then three Gallifreyans were born, called Rassilon, Omega, and the other, don't ask, who were spatial engineers. Rassilon, who was obsessed with immortality, and Omega, who was more obsessed with science and time. Everything's going hunky-dory until one day Rassilon opens up a portal to another universe, as you do, and brings forth the beings called the Great Vampires. The Great Vampires start wrecking the Time Lord shit, so there's a war, and it goes on for a long time, but we don't really know that much about it because it takes place in an era called the Dark Times, and eventually the Space Lords defeat the Great Vampires and everything's hunky-dory again. Then Omega and Rassilon, the latter of whom was becoming a large political figure at this point in time, started to experiment with trying to make time travel possible. Rassilon and Omega discovered that using something called the Hand of Omega, they could release enough energy from a star going supernova, creating a black hole, to make time travel possible. To the Space Lords. Rassilon then betrays Omega during their final experiment as Omega's ship circles the star being turned into a black hole, and Omega falls into it, sending him to an antimatter universe and making time travel possible.
Rassilon then uses Omega as a martyr to the Gallifreyan people to bolster support for himself, and becomes president. With Rassilon's access to time, he starts structuring time in such a way with the use of the Eye of Harmony to create what is known as the Time Vortex, in order for Time Lords to travel through it. In old canon anyway, as the Time Lords begin to be exposed to the Time Vortex through the Eye of Harmony, they gain regenerative abilities, but can only do so 12 times. Even with this fact, Rassilon starts searching for a way to become immortal towards the end of all his lives, but ultimately can't, and his corpse is put in something called the Death Zone, until being resurrected for the Time War.
Phew, that was a lot. Look, I know Critical is clearly drawing from the characterizations of the Time Lords in New Who, but if he's trying to describe why the entire franchise is dead, all 57 years of it from his perspective, then why doesn't he mention Classic Who or how the Time Lords are actually characterized? Oh yeah, he alludes to Classic Who, but you'll notice he never actually names any names or remarks on any episodes or events. Who's the we Critical is talking about here? The general audience, the fans? To whom are you targeting this information?
But the creative powerhouse that is Chris Chibnall was like, nah, it'll be fine. Why bother to maintain an intriguing mystery when you can just shit your own dumb, unsatisfying answer onto the screen, declare that it's a permanent part of the show's history, and totally undermine the work of entire generations of writers?
Sheer fucking hubris.
Guess what? Welcome to Doctor Who. That kind of happens a lot.
Anyway, back to whatever passes for a plot. So the Master takes a break from being a total dick to invite the Cybermen to come through the portal so he can form an alliance with them. The Cybermen are led by this absolute twat who—
Wait, don't you know Ashad's name? Okay, you know, the whole lone Cyberman thing? You have watched the series, right?
who explains that he's got his hands on a death particle that can destroy all organic life in the universe.
No way!
Wow, really? One particle can do all that? Destroy all life in the entire universe? Like, how? How does one come by such an element? Does it occur naturally? If so, how does anything exist in the universe?
Hang on.
When activated, capable of destroying all organic life.
Very nice. Did you make that?
The Siberian created it. From me.
Did you just spontaneously forget that? Now I know what you're going to say. Oh, the episode is so bad, even I forgot about that. Well, yeah, but Critical is a reviewer. He's meant to review things analytically and fairly, with all the facts. You know, it's not very hard information to find in episode. Why did he miss it? But hey, maybe he did just make one little mistake. As long as he doesn't do it again.
Also, don't the Cybermen have living brains inside their armour? I mean, Yaz and the others are actually able to wear and move around in it, which suggests there's enough space inside for a functioning human body. At the very least, this guy has an entire fucking head inside his helmet, so releasing the death particle would almost certainly kill all the Cybermen as well.
Part organic. You, more than most.
My new cyber warriors are purged of organic components. We shall rise towards full automation, driven by the intelligence of the Siberian.
Did you actually watch the episode Critical?
What's a genius screenplay? Great work, Chris. To be fair, the Cybermen don't exactly strike me as the sharpest tool in the shed. Yaz and the others are able to consistently outwit and outfight them, and they're a bunch of absolute morons. I mean, can someone explain why the Cybermen are considered some of the most deadly enemies in Doctor Who? Because they seem kind of slow and dumb. They walk straight into ambushes without any tactical awareness, and they can be easily killed with small arms fire. Jesus, even Ryan the Plank manages to blow a bunch of them up.
Again, another decent point, but surely that's kind of obvious in this episode. It doesn't revolve a lot of critical thinking. Do you want to point out anywhere else in the series where the Cybermen may have been portrayed as intimidating or strong? No? Okay, again.
Also, I don't know why, but the script absolutely spunks all over Yaz for some reason. Graham even heaps so much praise on her, you'd think she'd just cured cancer, brought peace to the Middle East, and bagged him a hot date with Scarlett Johansson. And of course, the others are all dumb and ineffectual by comparison. Maybe they're just not diverse enough.
The whole Yaz is amazing thing was just one scene. Yeah, it felt just as disjointed in episode, but it was literally just one scene. Also, didn't Graham come up with the idea of hiding in cyber armor? You know, the idea that saved Yaz and the humans' lives.
So anyway, the Master uses a convenient shrink ray on...
Convenient? He's had it for this whole series. He's had it in this episode.
Arsehole Cyberman leader and takes command of all the other Cybermen. Then he puts the bodies of dead Time Lords inside their armor, thus revealing his diabolical scheme to create an army of Cyber Time Lords. This is real, this is happening. Actual professional writers came up with this.
Ah, yes. What a stupid and completely foreign concept. Do you want to explain why you think they don't work or couldn't possibly happen in universe? Okay, I'm not doing that thing again. Right.
Then the Doctor impersonator gets a visit from stunningly diverse previous Doctor.
What does that have to do with anything in story? Please fucking tell me.
And then she overloads the Matrix by remembering too much stuff. Fuck off, show. Then she has one last reunion with her fam, and honestly, the script does everything except have her and Yaz make out right there in the middle of the retardus.
What? Firstly, Yaz and the Doctor have barely interacted this episode. I'm not saying there isn't anything there, but everything in episode can be chalked up to them being friends, not lovers. Yes, I know a romance between the Doctor and Yaz starts to flourish in Series 13 and beyond, but it isn't exactly prevalent in this episode. Also, this isn't Jodie's TARDIS. This is another TARDIS.
Then she goes to confront the Master with a bomb made out of the death particle. Wait, won't that kill everything in the universe? Nah, it'll be fine. Apparently, it'll just kill everyone on Gallifrey now. Why? Don't know.
Gee, it's almost like Gallifrey is in a pocket universe or something.
This script is like a drunk old man, blindly lurching from one desperately improvised plot fix to another, and honestly, it's absolutely hilarious to watch. It's physically impossible to become invested in this nonsense, because literally anything could happen at any moment to completely undermine the premise of a situation.
Nothing really to say here. Pretty decent point in all honesty.
So the Doctor impersonator marches in there with the bomb and threatens to blow everything up. And the Master's like, okay, do it. And she's like, nah. And he's like, oh, go on. You know, if you really want to blow up the universe, why don't you just release the death particle yourself, you dick? Why does the Doctor impersonator have to do it for you?
Wasn't he teasing the Doctor to do it? You know, trying to egg them on?
Why are the Cyber Time Lords standing there doing nothing? What is the point in even using the death particle when everyone in this situation will just regenerate anyway? Why should the Doctor impersonator ever worry about dying when she can keep coming back to life forever? Why does nothing in this show make any fucking sense ever?
Again, a pretty decent point. The timeless child reveal does lower the stakes for the Doctor as an individual. To be honest, there isn't really anything in this segment for me to really critique about, so I'm just going to speed it up.
Anyway, the pointless and so tried standoff gets broken when someone bedshear shows up and takes the bomb from the Doctor impersonator. And I'm not kidding, the Master and everyone else just stands there allowing this to happen. Why don't you just fucking shoot them immediately, you absolute cheese and chutney sandwiches? I mean, is it me? Am I doing this wrong? Am I just not getting this show? Trying to review Doctor Who these days is like flirting with some kind of existential crisis. Like I'll tumble off into madness if I think about it too long. God help me, the bedshear detonates the bomb, Gallifrey blows up and everyone dies. But the good guys escape in some spare retardances and they all live happily ever after. But then a bunch of space rhinos show up and throw the Doctor impersonator in space jail and the episode ends. And that's it, that's the plot for the timeless children. Probably the last episode of Doctor Who that I'll ever watch. Trying to review this nonsensical bullshit is like trying to fight your way out of quicksand. The harder you try to escape, the more it pulls you down. Everything that was bad in previous episodes is even worse here. First up, there's the broken storyline, filled with plot holes so big you could almost fit Amy Schumer's arse through them, that pulls so many revelations and quick fixes out that it feels like it must have been written by Ryan Johnson.
Oh, of course, I almost forgot. This is a Fandom Menace video. They have to mention random controversial celebrity or Ryan Johnson at some point because, God forbid, you forget about The Last Jedi and move on with your life. What does this point really serve as other than being just common association?
Then there's the usual phoned-in, amateur-hour performances from everyone involved, especially Jodie Whittaker, whose attempts to channel gravitas and inner darkness are like watching a toddler doing their best Bane impression. And of course, there's the usual overzealous BBC diversity casting. I love how virtually every previous incarnation of the Doctor and the Time Lords are now either female or non-white or both.
Oh no, not women and people of colour. They really do affect the quality of the story.
It's become so trite and predictable at this point for the BBC to smack you over the head with this stuff that you can practically set your watch by it. Naturally, the women are all smart, tough, resourceful and natural leaders, and the men are all whiny, incompetent, cowardly, stupid and need to be told exactly what to do.
Again, Graham was the one who came up with the idea of hiding in the cyber armour. For as cringy as it was, Ryan did throw that bomb and destroy a platoon of Cybermen. For as forgettable a character as this was, he did take apart the Cybermen armour. He did know what he was doing. What about Koshamas, who sacrificed his life at the end of the episode, saving the day, and also being the one to set up the cyber resistance in the first place? I know it seems like I'm grasping at straws here, but I'm only trying to answer Critical's kind of ridiculous statement.
See, it's funny because Graham can't get his helmet off. Let's laugh at the silly old man. Oh, Bradley Walsh, I don't know what they paid you to be in this show, but I hope it was worth it, my son.
Gee, it's almost like he's a comedian or something, with a comedic background.
All of these things are bad enough, but they're pretty much par for the course with Doctor Who at this point. We know the show's creative team is a contradiction in terms. We know the actors either don't give a fuck or don't have any talent to begin with. We know the writers don't understand what made this show good and lack the ability to craft a decent story anyway. But it's the destruction of the show's canon that's the biggest sin here.
Ah yes, the canon you know so much about.
Not content with ruining Doctor Who by presenting their own unique vision of it in the present, Chris Chibnall and the writing team now seem determined to sink their claws into the show's 57-year legacy as well.
Gee, it's not like we have an audio company dedicated to doing exactly that.
I got a real sense that they want to make a lasting mark on the entire Doctor Who franchise, not just the handful of seasons they've been given, probably because they know they're living on borrowed time and everyone can't wait to get them out the fucking door.
Everyone? Who's everyone? The higher-ups of the BBC? The fans? Who?
Just like with the dildo teddy bear that's been awkwardly photoshopped into your family albums, you can't even escape from Chibnall's influence by finding solace in past versions of the Doctor now. Whenever you look at William Hartnell playing the very first Doctor, somewhere in the back of your mind you'll know that people like this came before him.
So are you annoyed that William Hartnell isn't the first Doctor, or are you annoyed that a person of colour came before him, canonically? I'm confused.
When you think of the mighty Time Lords of Gallifrey now, you'll know that they only came into being because of strong female explorer repeatedly murdering children.
Ah yes, there are no strong independent women on Gallifrey, and the Time Lords haven't done anything bad to a child ever before in the history of anything ever.
And it's just kind of depressing to see the work of so many talented, hard-working people being slowly undone and trampled on by their unworthy successors.
People I will neglect to mention in this review.
People who were chosen for the job because they spouted the correct politics, or fit the correct demographics, or toed the correct line. People who probably wouldn't even be working in the industry if it wasn't for the extremely accommodating hiring practices at the BBC.
Sheer fucking hubris.
Remember everyone, if you are a woman or a minority who just so happened to work at the BBC or on the production of Doctor Who when it was being made, no matter how cursory a position it may have been, then you're a talentless hack. Have a nice day.
You know, one of the virtues of living in today's world is being able to sit back and watch the wholesale destruction of every science fiction franchise we used to know and love. In some cases, it was down to greed and incompetence on the part of the studios, trying to squeeze more money from shows and movies that ran creatively dry decades ago. In others, the aggressive pushing of agendas and politics at the expense of good storytelling ultimately killed the fun and turned people away.
Ah, yes, because Doctor Who has never had a political agenda in relation to a fantastic story, ever, 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 in the history of ever.
While in others still, the lack of creative new ideas led to uninspiring retreads of previous ground, dressed up in fast-paced scripts and superficially flashy visuals. But Doctor Who is one of those rare instances that manages to combine all three into a perfect storm of shittiness. The decision to cast a female Doctor was a bold one that could have paid off in the long run, if only the showrunners had had the common sense and humility to handle the change with sensitivity and respect.
What does that even mean? Jodie's gender was brought up one time in that episode you're showing, Woman Who Fell to Earth, and that's it.
They could have proven their detractors wrong by hiring the very best writers they could find and focusing all their energy on producing fun, engaging adventures that everyone could enjoy.
Who are you talking about? Which writers? Give me examples, please.
Instead, they played right into the hands of all those critics who claimed they were going to spoil the fun for everyone. They did exactly what people feared they would do, turning a quirky, beloved character into a preachy, annoying, judgmental busybody hidden beneath a thin veneer of eccentricity and social awkwardness.
Yes, but how? Give me examples. Stop vaguely alluding to Doctor Who and use specifics.
There's an almost tangible sense of hostility and mean-spiritedness hanging around this show now. Like it kind of knows that people hate it, and it's just sticking around as long as possible to spite them. But go it must, because most of its audience already has. And to be honest, I'm one of them. This will be the final Doctor Who review I do.
Well, that's bullshit.
Because honestly, this show is simply not worth my time any longer. Or yours.
Again.
So with that in mind, let me offer a few parting words to Chris Chibnall and his buddies.
To whom, again, I will not specify.
I hope you're proud of yourselves. I hope the destruction of one of the most popular and enduring TV shows in British history was a price you were willing to pay. Because when it's all over and you look back on your legacy of failure, you'll realise that all you really did was prove every single one of your critics absolutely right. Anyway, that's all I've got for today.
Well, that was mostly shit. Well, what can I really say here? Critical is far too vague and non-specific to be taken seriously. His analysis is one-note and uninformed. It's vulgar, not funny, its metaphors go nowhere. He says he speaks for canon, but then doesn't actively mention that canon or Doctor Who's supposed 57-year-long history. Look, the reason I did this video wasn't to grift, or because I was jealous, or hell, even in defense of the Chibnall era that much. But I believe if you identify yourself as a critical thinker, you should be willing to put in the work to review something fairly. I don't like The Timeless Child as much as anyone, but you can at least look at it more objectively than this. Which, if you know the fandom menace, is extremely ironic. And I'm going to say it, with how many plot points he misses in the episode, and everything else he skips over that's just plain and obvious in the plot, I don't think he actually watched the episode. Yeah, I don't. But maybe that's a bit of a stretch from me. Thanks to everyone who watched this video all the way through, including those people who watch Critical Drinker, who may want to see a different kind of point of the argument, maybe? I'm not sure. But yeah, apart from that, that's the end of the video now. Jeez, this thing's taking up too much storage on my computer. Right, see you later, everyone.